Here's every single reason why you should run a webinar in 2026. And by the end of this video, you will ideally be sold on running a webinar yourself. If you're currently a coach, a business owner, you're selling a product or a service online, or even if you're an agency owner looking for some inspiration, I will sell you on why running a webinar is probably one of the best business decisions that you can make this year and then the following 3, 4, or even 5 years. Right? So my name is Simon Asman. All we talk about here on this channel is scaling your high-ticket business to 6 to 7 figures. And again, this video is nothing else. I will explain exactly how webinars have generated us $365,000 in the last 3 months for our clients, why we are such huge webinar fans, especially in the times that we're living in right now, and why you should do it too, and all the different benefits of running a webinar that you probably weren't aware of. And if you're already a subscriber, I've got a massive banger for you. So without further talk, let's dive right in. Well, first of all, let me talk a bit about my experience, right? So we've launched one webinar campaign on Black Friday last year in November, so around 4 months ago, right? Where we've generated 167K in revenue and 133K in cash, and even hit an 8.3x ROAS on a completely cold webinar campaign, right? Now, why do I emphasize this all the time? Because essentially, a cold webinar isn't the same thing as a warm webinar, because obviously with a cold webinar, you have a completely unaware audience that doesn't like and trust you. So running a cold webinar and scaling it predictably is art. And this is where webinars actually shine. Because a lot of people could host a webinar right now and liquidate a bunch of their warm audience. But scaling predictably with webinars is what makes this funnel so effective. And that's exactly why I'm telling you, you should run a webinar in 2026. Well, first of all, here you can see, by the way, our screenshot. It was for this e-commerce brand over here. Another thing that we just did in the past was we scaled an Amazon BizUp offer in December. We started working with this client from minus $50,000. He was literally minus 50K because he got burned by another agency, to $100,000 cash collected this month. Okay, through running weekly cold webinar campaigns. Okay, we didn't have a VSL funnel, we didn't have a profile funnel. We are installing these now because we're running something called the funnel ecosystem, where we try to take advantage of all of this stuff, but we had none of this in place. Okay, and this guy had only 126 followers on Instagram and 200 followers on YouTube, so was a completely cold account. Didn't even have social interaction that much, right? And as you can see over here, our Airtable screenshots and some walk screenshots. So not only this, we've scaled a sales coaching offer from 15K a month to 20K a week through running bi-monthly cold webinar campaigns, right? As you can see over there, we didn't even run weekly campaigns, but we're currently running them like bi-monthly. Here you see a quick testimonial. And we've literally ran dozens of webinars in the past. On my channel, you can find a bunch of different videos where I break down webinar funnels, where I break down webinar frameworks, how to write them, which is definitely something I would highly recommend you, especially if you're a new subscriber right now, or if you're new to this channel and you want to learn more about this. I'm breaking all of this down in this videos, right? And literally around various different niches, including the B2B, the AI automation, the trading niche. And we have generated 363K plus in the last 3 months for our clients. Okay. And I'm not showing this to brag. Again, I'm not the guy to show you big numbers and say, wow, okay, because obviously this is what we've generated, right? But what I just want to say is that all that would have never been possible without running webinars. Okay, so webinars are responsible for these results. Webinars as a conversion mechanism have generated us these results, okay, on completely cold client accounts. So no VSL funnel, no organic content strategy, or no story sequence, DM funnel, wow, include some urgency and limited spots, blah, 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 what you see all the time in this growth up space, would have been able to generate that much for cold campaigns. Because again, as I said, when you're partnering with a big creator, or when you're a big creator yourself, you have a lot of followers on Instagram, on YouTube, webinars would still absolutely crush it for you, but you have the opportunity to go with other funnel strategies as well. But when you have not that much following yet, or when you're just generally looking to scale and tap into cold traffic to scale way over the top of your organic reach, this is mainly just possible through webinars, okay? No fancy story sequence on Instagram. And I will sell you on running a webinar today, as I said, right? So want to have a look at some A players, like as you can see, Jeremy Haynes YouTube video over there, Russell Bronson YouTube video, Alex Hormozi, another webinar YouTube video, Jason Fladlien, the absolute king of webinars as well. Like literally everyone, every A player, every successful business owner selling a product or a service online is running webinars right now or has run a webinar in the past. And as you can see over there on this video, Alex Hormozi has literally generated $105 million with a live virtual event for his last book launch. It was rather something like a challenge, but still webinar funnels and challenges aren't that different. Challenges are way more work intense. Challenges generate way more money, need way more promo, but they still pretty similar to the entire overall mechanism of running a webinar, right? As you can see, sold over 3 million copies in a single day. Okay. Now, Jason Fladlien, the man who wrote Alex Hormozi's webinars, he didn't write the entire webinar, to be clear, but he helped him, especially with the pitch section. He said that, like, especially Alex Hormozi's book, $1 Million Offers, was mainly inspired by Jason Fladlien's way of pitching offers on webinars. This is what Jason Fladlien said. Again, I'm not the, I don't have more information about this, but yeah, he basically generated $250 million in his very own career through webinars, right? And every 7-figure a month high ticket business that you know, right? Over here, Brooke Hiddings, Shelby Saab, Jordan Lee. This is even a slide from his webinar. I didn't want to show his entire webinar here. All of these guys are running webinars, right? We see a pattern. Every successful person that is selling a business, that is selling a service or a product online, is running webinars. So why aren't you? Because webinars obviously are work intense. You obviously need to know how to run webinars the correct way, right? Because you probably heard about a lot of horror stories as a client over here who have just burned 50K on webinar campaigns, maybe even more, because they just didn't know how to get people to show up. Their webinars sucked. They weren't booking any calls. They were getting a very high cost per lead. Again, another big reason for running webinars in 2026 is something what we call the industry shift. If you look at history, industries and societies always move in cycles. So for example, when you think about France, and guys, this is just a very quick explanation of history. We won't deep dive into this a lot, no worries. But France, for example, went from an absolute monarchy under Louis XIV and Louis XVI, who were both extremely powerful absolute monarchs, to the chaos of the French Revolution, for example, right? Because they were sick of having kings up there, monarchs up there, telling them exactly what they do, because it was getting too much, right? Like these kings literally kind of they passed the line, right? And then this resulted in them executing the kings, right? as a reaction. And then again, this execution led to a lot of chaos in France, and to the French Revolution, where like random people were literally killed on the street. And then 10 years later, this French Revolution swung back to an even stronger leadership under Napoleon, who didn't even become a king. No, he even became an emperor. Okay, so what I want to tell you with this is the rubber band effect, how we tell this. Industries always behave like a rubber band. So you stretch them too far in one direction, and they will eventually snap back in the other direction. And we're currently at this pressure building phase where webinars gain momentum again. Because maybe you know, like there was a time in 2010 where webinars were extremely successful. But then people kind of got burned by webinars because everyone was running a webinar. So the VSL funnel, the DM funnel emerged, the automation kind of side of things, right? But right now, the market went all in on automation, especially with AI, right? We have pre-recorded VSL funnels everywhere. We have automated webinars, evergreen webinars who aren't even a bit the same, like a same webinar. They kind of like just like a long VSL. And we have AI-generated videos everywhere. So the market went all in on automation. And as you can see, our trust is currently declining. And we're right now at this point where trust was built through these VSLs and automated videos where they work pretty well. Now they plateaued, and right now they are kind of declining again. And we see them not performing as well, especially on cold traffic. You prospects are deprived of trust. And the main reason for that is, again, the age of AI. Everything they see online, like half of the things they see online is either fake or AI generated. Like fake claims or AI generated. So they desperate for finding someone who actually has authority and knows what they're speaking about, what they're talking about, okay? And this is something a webinar does, because unfortunately you can't drive around and meet every single person, every single customer in person. But the thing that comes closest to this is actually building a real customer relationship through virtual events, right? So basically webinars or challenges. And the main reason for that is trust. The main reason why webinars work that well is trust. Webinars are generally 2 hours long, where you sit in a virtual room with 500, 1,000, 2,000. We even had 7,000. There should be attendees. You see again another thing that I will mention in just a second, where you share value and answer questions. Okay, you have real-time interaction. You call names in the chat, so people see it's not pre-recorded. You take time to answer topic-related questions. And there's a full 30-minute open Q&A at the end, even an FAQ before it, so people see you move and talk in real time. For example, I would ask you, are we still recording? Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Are we still recording just for this YouTube video, obviously? Running live polls, right? You're running live polls, you're asking people, okay, does this make sense? You're getting their commitment, okay? Drop a yes in the chat, drop a 1, drop a flame in the chat if you're picking up what I'm just putting down for you, right? You're asking the audience to type something in the chat. Just imagine how different it would be for you to watch a pre-recorded video versus hearing, hey, in my case, Simon, that's a great question. Well, look, the thing about webinars is they work so well because they introduce a lot of trust. So maybe you had some problems before with running your VSL funnels. This is exactly why we want to run this, right? Just an example. When you actually call out names, you're there in person. The kind of trust you build cannot be compared with a pre-recorded VSL, okay? And another thing is imperfection signals. For example, if a video isn't that polished, like for example, this YouTube video that you're watching right now, as you can notice, I'm not cutting this because I'm a big fan of raw footage and of actually seeing someone, how they behave, and not kind of like cutting every single interaction just to seem a bit more polished, which is exactly what got lost in the Instagram culture, because everyone is kind of color grading their videos. Everyone is highly editing their videos. I did it as well, but this kind of loses the raw authenticity. And that's why currently, for example, these raw talking head videos where you just snap some captions under them are performing extremely well, because they show you from way more authentic side of things. And especially with AI, where we at this point in time right now where we cannot distinguish between an AI generated video and a real creator, for example, this gets very scary, and people are deprived of trust, right? So imperfection signals, for example, just by me adding registrancy, even though it should be attendees, this can happen on webinars as well. And it will happen because you have a 300 slide presentation generally, right? So misspelling, you pause the thing, you're misreading a sentence, you fix a slide mistake. Good point. I didn't cover that, John. Thank you. This builds a lot of trust because humans are imperfect. This is what makes us human. And this is what makes us still different from all the machines that we see out there. And also we have the opportunity to introduce social proof in real time. So people see others existing in the room. They see people typing yes, reacting to points, students joining the live room, students clicking on the links. They see the offer decline. And we even do something. This is one of our clients. We do a live Q&A with students. For example, he's in his warehouse, as you can see, and he has got his student there with him, who's then kind of answering questions like, what are the expected results with your offer? How long does it take to see results? How was your journey? Would you recommend this offer to someone who had no experience? Yeah, I also started with no experience, right? So it helps us introduce way more trust than a pre-recorded video, because this student, for example, is taking questions out of the chat from people who generally concerned and have objections and want them to get handled. And then he answers them, right, together with the offer on. We have also real-time expertise, meaning we explain concepts live, we answer unpredictable questions, and we give examples instantly. So something like, it's kind of like thinking on your feet, right? It's kind of freestyling, improvising, and just showing that you have actually the expertise and you're not just reading out a script, right? As you can maybe see from this video over here, I'm not just following the script over here. I'm giving my thoughts. And this is very similar thing with webinars. We want to have a structure with all these slides, but we want to still have room for screen sharing components where you go completely off script, 5 or 10 minutes. And this is essentially what builds a lot of trust. So webinar proves you actually know your stuff, right? And another big point that comes together with trust and that actually introduces a lot of trust is value. So one webinar beats every single top of funnel content that you see out there. We might know it very well from a lot of people we're following online that are flexing cars, yachts, jets, or whatever. And then kind of like mentioning in a side sentence that it came from this or that business model. Well, this content obviously is designed to grab attention, grow followers, and grow views, but it isn't designed to sell. And it isn't designed to actually make someone pull out their credit card and say, here you have it, I want to buy your product, right? A webinar is the exact opposite. Most people think a webinar is just a long sales pitch. But in my opinion, that's exactly why most webinars fail. And again, we've seen 20% book call rates across our webinars. We've seen 60% show up rates across our webinars. We're seeing 85% retention rates on our webinars in general, which generally talks a lot about the quality of a webinar, okay? And generating 6, 7, 8, even 10x ROAS on the webinar campaigns. So what I think that what a lot of people are getting wrong in this space, they think a webinar is just a huge pitch. And I saw this because we were literally working with a bunch of clients, and I stepped in. I was just recently on a consulting call with someone, and I looked at their webinar and it was just, guys, this is an entire pitch. You're not laying down anything valuable. You're laying down stuff that I could literally have Googled or have looked up in ChatGPT, and then I probably would even have gotten more information. How do you want to sell me on your main offer if your training part isn't delivering value? I've got a friend who was kind of like putting down even too much value. He's like, he has 1.5 value sessions, but this guy's booking a bunch of calls because of this value. So we're doing it as well. We were literally trying to focus on the training. Obviously, we want to have a nice introduction. We want to pepper in student proof and commitment and questions in our training as well, but make sure the training is absolutely dialed in. Just think about it. Let's say you signing up right now for a webinar which teaches you how to write a webinar. What would you like to hear? Someone pitching you just to buy their product where they write a webinar for you, or someone actually laying down the exact phrases they use, showing the exact webinars they've written in the past, showing how much they generated with it, and breaking down every single step of the process so you feel confident to do the exact same thing on your own. And that obviously emphasizes why it's much easier to work with them, right? So good webinars deliver massive trust. They are 1.5 hours of training. They contain live screen share components. They frame the pitch as a logical next step. They make the training sections insane, like literally, and give away too much. So just keep the practical implementation, the meat and the potatoes, what you're selling for your actual program. And we have something called the value tree, and this breaks down pretty well what's currently happening with webinars and how much you should be giving away. So when we see the trunk over there, the roots, the trunk, all the branches, all the leaves, this is basically our main offer. And most webinars kind of give away maybe this leaf over here, right? This is like literally most webinars. When you think about it, this entire tree's value, they're giving away this leaf, maybe this leaf, but not more. Our webinars give away an entire branch, as you can see, including the leaves, okay? But they're not including the trunk, and they're not including all the other branches, and they're not including the roots. So basically, a webinar should be one strong branch of the tree, but the full tree is what people get when they join. For example, I'm running a webinar. I'm selling done for you marketing and sales systems. I'm running a webinar about how to run webinars, how to write webinars, but I'm not teaching you how to write the ads. I'm not teaching you how to show the show up system. I'm not teaching you how to host a webinar. I'm not teaching you how to implement the replay promo. I'm not teaching you how to do VSL funnels, DM funnels, sales team management, offer creation, all the other stuff that actually comes with running a webinar is what I'm not laying down. So I'm still taking a good branch because obviously the presentation is a big part of that, but I'm not showing you the entire offer. And it would still be very valuable for you to work with me, ideally. And this is what we want to do with webinars. And we have something called value continuation. If the webinars was valuable, people think this was worth their time. They feel satisfied and they see you as an authority. They're more likely to buy what you offer, okay, compared for being pitched for 1 hour. This is something we call reciprocity. So let's say, for example, you're getting a gift from someone on Christmas. No, let's say a gift from someone today. What day do we have today? March the 10th, I think, right? And let's say you're giving a this video is pre-recorded, by the way. You're giving a gift to someone today, right? On Tuesday, on Wednesday, whatever. And this person doesn't expect the gift because, well, it's not Christmas, it's not my birthday, it's just a random gift. Then this person feels obligated to return you the favor, right? Because you gave them something without asking for someone, they will be more likely to give you something back, especially if the gift was valuable. Just imagine I gave you an iPhone Pro right now or a MacBook Pro. You would be, hell yeah, I want that for my business. I want that at least for my employees. You'd be, hell yeah, maybe I'm going to buy this guy's program, right? So if someone receives value, they naturally feel inclined to give something back. The same thing with webinars, right? To make the circle back. When someone just spent 2 hours learning something incredibly useful for this exact situation for free, they get an urge to give something back. This is goodwill, appreciation, openness to the offer. This is no manipulation. This is simply how humans are wired in general. So from a customer psychology point of view, this is exactly what works pretty well. Just basically giving stuff for free. And this is why we always say lead with value and trust first. And then the sales will come to you automatically, right? Another big thing is cold traffic. So what's very interesting that webinars are, in my opinion, the single best mechanism to convert completely cold leads. And we need to distinguish between cold leads, people who don't know you, who have never heard of you, who are like 99% of the market, maybe 90%, depending on your size. And then people who've heard of you, who know you, who maybe are aware of your solution, who are aware of the product you're selling. These are very easier to convert. So people who are cold, are the most difficult people to convert, but they are the people where you actually want to tap in to scale. So when we think about the organic sales process, right? Let's say a random person. So what basically happens naturally with your content, with Instagram, whatever. A random person enters your funnel, wherever that might be. They see a profile pop up on the Instagram Explore page. They watch one of your Instagram videos. They watch a story. Then they watch another YouTube video, another Instagram breakdown. Then they read an email and a newsletter. Then some time passes again. Some day pass. They watch another reel. Another week passes. They click on one of your YouTube videos through your ManyChat automation. Another week passes. They read another email you sent them. Another YouTube video. And after some weeks, it snaps and they like, this desire is building up all the time. They're visually imagining them buying your product and them getting the desired outcomes that are attached to your product, and then kind of hit the exit point, which means they put out their credit card and hand you their 5K or whatever it might be, right? But as you might see, the organic sales process takes a lot of time because it's organic, it's natural. People aren't urged. There's literally no urgency. Maybe the only urgency might be a story in your Instagram story. Spots are limited. We're increasing prices soon, which, by the way, won't work that well long term because you don't want to burn your audience. It should always be real urgency. But essentially, this is what the organic sales process is. And this works for organic leads, obviously, because they want, right? And this is what feels natural. And this is what we want to have with our content. But when you're thinking about getting cold leads and basically spending money on ads, because obviously content is free, right? But spending money on ads to acquire leads. And when we think about a cold webinar sales process, we basically want to shortcut this entire middle point between entry and exit point through our webinar and the show up sequence, as you can see over there. So a webinar compresses weeks of value into a single 2-hour session that happens within the first 3 to 5 days after seeing us the first time. So one thing about the launch time, I see people talking a lot about 14 days launch. And this makes sense when you're running a webinar on an organic promo or something like a challenge. But when you're consistently running webinars, cold webinars, and mainly cold, you want to optimize the show up rate, and especially cold leads, even though you might have Hamid ads in place, even though you might have email sequences in place, cold leads will be less likely to show up to your webinar because they obviously don't know you. And this is why we generally want to ideally launch 5 days out with a webinar, maybe even 3 days out. And we do something in between to still get the show up and to still nurture leads and to kind of, again, compress this organic sales process, which is called value bombing. So we send at least 20 emails. We send at least 50 different WhatsApp messages. We have at least 35 to 40 short form and 15 to 20 long form pieces that we hammer leads with on Meta, on Instagram, and on Facebook that registered. We have custom PDFs, something like a huge gamma board. You can see it in my other videos. We have a lot of YouTube videos that we send these guys. And then obviously the presentation here, by the way, a couple of presentations that we've scripted in the past for different clients, as you can see over there. And this works so well because cold leads are missing trust and context on the opportunity, on the offer, and you as an authority. So we want to give them as much as they can. And through increasing the number of available touch points, we're making them familiar with us and like us. Insanely fast, right? I just want to show you the familiarity bias over here, or the mu exposure effect. So, for example, let's say Apple. I see Apple one time. This same thing happened to me, by the way. Hey, who wants their stuff? And then Apple hammers me everywhere. They send me UGC content. I maybe even opted for a webinar where they try to sell me a MacBook or whatever to entrepreneurs. And Apple hammers me everywhere. I see them everywhere. Everywhere I see it, everywhere I walk. My friends have iPhones, whatever. These things are the best. I want to have my own MacBook, right? And this is basically how the familiarity bias works. So we're kind of increasing the number of touch points. We're making our leads see us everywhere, right? And pre-recorded funnels struggle to convert cold leads. because they don't have this trust building components, they don't have this live component, they don't have this compressed value component. And that's why, especially when you're currently running cold VSLs or cold EM funnels, it's way harder than scaling with a webinar, right? That's why we, for example, recommend running 4 cold webinars, ideally for maximal effectiveness. Now, we've covered trust, value, cold traffic. Another big thing is urgency. Okay, so as you can see over there, this is one of our landing pages, and you can see a wonderful timer and the date over there. And you can see limited spots available. This is, by the way, in the above fold, so when someone clicks on the website, they instantly see all that. Now, webinars are doing great at naturally introducing urgency and scarcity, so they get people to take action, right? Urgency is this urge you feel when there's a deadline, when there's something that needs to be done because of a certain reason. Because if people don't act, if they don't have a deadline, if they think they can come back to this later, people won't act, and your sales cycle will get prolonged and so on. More about this in a second. So we call this the procrastination problem. And webinars have something what we call built-in urgency, simply because they are a live event. First, urgency is applied to the date and time, as you can see over there. The webinar is live, scheduled for a specific date and time. Cold leads don't know if it will happen again, and this creates FOMO, fear of missing out. This is exactly why we have a ticking timer on this page, because people know, all right, the webinar will happen in 16 hours. Maybe I should still sign up, or if not, I will miss the chance. Maybe there's no replay available. Oh, what should I do? Maybe there's a lot of available stuff shared, and I'm missing this chance for free. Right. And we generally host them on Tuesday to Thursday, even sometimes on Sunday, generally between 7 to 8 p.m. EST. And again, limited spots available over there. And this is the second urgency component, limited spots. Platforms like Webinar Jam genuinely have attendee limits depending on the plan. For us, it's kind of 2,000 attendees right now for most of our webinars. People know spots are finite, so they will act sooner. And we emphasize this. We say, literally in our ad, we say, by the way, I'm running a free live masterclass where I'm breaking down how to write webinars. Because of the software we're using, we only have limited spots available, so we don't wait too long. Time-sensitive bonuses offers, for example, we apply a bunch of bonuses, which are generally most valuable components and done for you components, and we make them only available during the webinar. So if people don't act, the bonus disappears. And then we apply also scarcity to the appointments. For example, when we go for a book a call funnel, we say something like, or even when we go to direct checkout and we just have a limited availability of spots, we say something like, yo, for one-on-one calls or high ticket offers, we only have limited spots available. And we can even display this section, Webinar Jam, as you can see over there. You have the available units over there and time. And then we have something called replay scarcity. So we generally have a 2 to 3 day replay promo, right? And even for the replay, we add urgency. So as you can see, we have a timer over there. We say the limited time to claim the offer from the replay, because what we generally do, we attach the offer to the replay. So in the webinar, we say, yo, buy it right now. And then after the webinar, we say something like, hey, the replay is still on for 3 days. Watch it if you haven't done it yet and claim the free offer. It's still available for 3 days, right? Where we then have a discount, bonuses, urgency, and so on. And this is a massive thing. Like, urgency isn't to underestimate. And webinars help you build natural and real urgency, because we all know there's so much fake urgency out there. And webinars just help you make this real because they are live. I mean, what should I do if it's a live event, right? And yeah. Now, another big thing is pipeline. Webinars aren't only appealing to cold leads. They work extremely well for warm traffic as well. But for warm traffic, you want to make sure you don't burn these guys too hard with urgency and marketing. So the best practices: run one monthly webinar to your main email list, one monthly warm webinar to your main email list, to social media followers, whether that's promotion on your YouTube videos or on your Instagram Reels or your Instagram stories or through profile interactions. So we could even run a couple of retargeting ads in Meta. It's a bit difficult here because generally when we target profile interactions in Meta, and when we go completely broad, we generally also retarget leads because Meta kind of targets the people who are most likely to interact and see results. And if there are people who interacted with your profile, this will generally be people who Meta will go after first. So kind of a broad campaign is kind of a retargeting if we're not exclusively excluding people who interacted with your profile in these audiences. So, and what we do is basically, we target product aware people. Very interesting thing. On average, a prospect watches 2 to 3 webinars before buying, and even the same webinar, right? So you need to consistently expose them to your webinars. These are product aware people. They already know your product exists, but didn't buy. And they're almost there. They're almost there, but they just need that missing edge to take action. Okay. So they basically need the right combination of trust, value, interaction, and urgency. All that which is applied to a webinar and the live event happens and gets people off the fence who didn't act earlier. So webinars basically add a new conversion mechanism where all the VSL campaigns, so with your sales letters, email marketing, or DM funnels might have not converted them simply because they didn't have the special offer. They didn't have this social interaction. They didn't see you live and they want to see you live before they take action, which I can highly understand. And they're still in your pipeline. They're still always thinking about, maybe, but they haven't taken action yet. And the webinar is what takes kind of also a bit advantage of impulsive selling because it's a live event. It's an urgency. There's urgency applied to the offer. People got nurtured a lot. And they have this reciprocity effect. So people will be more likely to buy on the webinar than from a VSL, for example, or even from an email, right? And it also has the Hoover effect, right? So when you think about a pipeline, it's prospecting, qualifying, first contact, proposal, book call, show up, follow-up, long-term follow-up, short-term follow-up, deposit pitch, to close, no one, and so on, right? So basically what we do with our pipeline, we clean this pipeline out and revive leads who were irresponsive or indecisive in the past and pull them back in. So we also hoover kind of old leads, right? And not only this, we have something what we call the ongoing nurturing effect. And this is probably, I should have even made an entire new point about this, because this nurture effect is one of the biggest reasons why webinars worked well. Forget thinking about webinars as an event where you just only need to maximize the value that's generated on the webinar. Webinars are nothing else than a huge lead magnet that attracts leads. So by running webinars regularly, you keep your audience warm and engaged, okay? Even if they don't convert the first time. As you said, leads in general watch 2 to 3 webinars, right? So webinars have this nurturing effect. Just by showing up live, they have this reciprocity, they have this trust building component, and they keep your audience warm. And this nurturing effect goes on for weeks, even for months after the webinar campaign. And then 15 to 25% of the sales happen on the back end, weeks, even months after leads have watched your webinar. For example, through retargeting. When you run retargeting VSL ads to them, you run retargeting book a call ads to them, where you say something like, "Hey, just saw you watched the webinar, but for any reason you didn't book a call with us yet." And man, I can understand this, right? Like taking action might feel scary, but what's actually risky? Waiting all the time, right? Not changing anything about the situation that cost you to show up to this webinar because you know I can help you with that, or following a proven system that has worked for 100+ different people, where I hold your hand step by step, where you follow a proven system that it's the closest thing to guaranteeing you results, and so on, blah, 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 right? So basically, we retarget these leads through meta ads, through VSL campaigns, even through our organic content when they follow us, through emails, and then they are more likely to convert because they got nurtured on the webinar. So don't underestimate this. Like the back end of a webinar is probably this recurring webinar revenue that comes in after webinar is one of the highest
paying assets a webinar has. Implement UTM tracking, by the way, to be able to see this. And also, a webinar allows us to personalize our show-up sequences and our marketing automation. Just what I talked about right now. We have people who re-pitched on the webinar, so people who stayed until the pitched, people who registered in general, people who registered no-showed, people who registered and attended. And then we can target these people who attended but didn't get pitched, people who attended but didn't book a call, for example, right? I can retarget these people then with if this then that marketing automations and even ad retargeting strategies. This is what we call personalization. I could say I target people who registered but didn't attend. I tell them, hey, we do this with email marketing automations, for example. Hey, you just watched the webinar, and generally I get it because like life happens, right? Maybe you forgot about it. Maybe you've got other things coming up. I just wanted to show you that yesterday was insane. And because a lot of people like you missed it, because obviously we've got all our lives and our obligations to go after, I want to do something I actually said I didn't want to do earlier. I'm giving you the free access to the replay. Make sure you watch it. And then we don't mention the pitch. We just make them go on the replay page where they don't have to book a calendar link. And then we follow up with them again. And then one day we drop the Typeform link where they can then fill out the Typeform and qualify and book a call and so on. And we do the same thing with people who attended but didn't book. Hey, again, like as I said with the meta ad, for example, you attend the webinar, but you didn't book a call. And then we have a cost of inaction. We make a massive student proof testimonial. So I could literally even target these guys with long form ads where I break down my entire offer. Hey, so you showed up for the webinar, but you didn't join us yet. And I fully understand this. So I want to be transparent with you and show you exactly every single thing that you get when you join us today, and what you and remember the offer is still live for 3 days. So here's everything you get, and I will actually show you everything from inside, and then it breaks down everything on the Gamma board and so on, handles their objections, right? And this is something a webinar allows us to do, and this is insanely powerful because these marketing automations aren't a general, hey, we're going live. They are very, very, very structured and personalized asset that helps a lot because people obviously react to personalization. That's why first names are working that well on email marketing tools. Another big point of webinars is sales cycles. So when you think about a sales cycle, it's basically the time that passes between investing money and then getting that money back, and all that in between there is the sales cycle. So a sales cycle is between when you invest money and when you get that money back. For example, you spend 5K on ads, and after some time, whether that's be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 months, you get 20K back, right? So your sales cycle is the time between spend and return. And webinars shorten these sales cycles. For example, they lead to higher PIF rates. What we can see across our webinar campaigns is that generally when we do a webinar and we're taking advantage of this urgency and of this impulsive buying, webinars lead to way higher PIF rates because these leads are way more warmed up than leads that come from our VSL. And the PIF helps us skip the payment plans of recurring payments where we get our money delayed back after months, and helps us collect the cash right after the first 7 days and then reinvest it in the front end. So you get your money back faster, which allows you to reinvest faster, run multiple campaigns around for multiple funds, and accelerate your growth. So this makes scaling predictable, okay? And this is not to underestimate. For example, when you think about a VSL funnel, right? We're running a cold VSL funnel. By the way, this is obviously everything for cold, because when you're running cold, you're putting down money to make more money. So for a cold VSL funnel, I launched a campaign, I entered the learning phase, I'm spending a lot of money, I'm not getting anything back. And then slowly the VSL funnel is picking up momentum. I'm still spending all the time because of what VSL funnel is ongoing spend. And I'm getting about a bit of money back all the time. It's kind of a steady flow that kind of picks up momentum and maybe goes even a bit further like this in the past. But when we look at the webinar, a webinar allows us to scale way faster because we put down money and we get everything back in the first 7 days. And we don't spend money in this period, right? Maybe a bit on book call ads, but they don't have the highest cost per schedule, for example, because these leads are already warm. Then we put down again more money, we run a next campaign. We put down more money, we run our next campaign. By the way, this should even be way higher because we are kind of getting a 4x row, so it should be around here. Running a next campaign, putting down money, right? So a webinar basically allows us to scale predictably because we're putting down money, and we know that after a certain time, which in a webinar, if we're going with PIFs, it would generally be 7 days after investing the money, we're getting our money back already. When we assume that, for example, our closers have 2 days, they're booking call on our closed calendars 2 days after the webinar. They still need to show up. Obviously, that's why we have show up sequences. But yeah, essentially, this allows you then to take this money, reinvest it again, as I said, put it down again, and then scale again. And it makes it way more profitable when we're easier to scale than we use Alpha. But again, what I want to mention here, webinars obviously are time intensive and they come with a lot of work. So as you can see, they have a bunch of benefits that we just talked about. And I would highly recommend you running a webinar if you're selling a high ticket business, if you're selling a high ticket offer online. And again, as I said, a reason why not everyone does them is they are time intensive. You mostly run cold webinars, putting down a lot of money as well upfront without getting anything back, which can feel scary because the results are coming in after 1 week generally, right? And you don't know if it will work. A lot of people are struggling with show-up rates. A lot of people are struggling with low retention rates. Their webinar is a huge pitch, as I said again. So if you're looking for a way how you can essentially run a webinar and scale predictably through cold traffic mainly, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at Simon@Asman or book a free strategy call with me on growinginfo.com. All the links are in my description. As you can see, we have seen some crazy results with webinars. Webinars is what we mainly specialize in. Obviously, we also do VSLs and DM funnels, but as I said, webinars are more work intensive. So I feel proud to say we specialize on webinars, and we can definitely help you out with that, as we've done for our clients, right? And this is how we've generated like multiple 6 figures in the last 3 to 4 months. So again, also, if you're new to this channel, feel free to leave me a like and a subscribe. I would highly appreciate it. And we see each other again in another video here on this channel, where I show you another huge benefit, how you can scale your high ticket business to 6 to 7 figures.